So you want to own a volcano? Here is the part nobody tells you. A tour ticket can post at 229 New Zealand dollars, and at Wakari, 22 of 47 people on that island died. Roughly 1 death for every 2.1 people present. You were not selling a volcano. You were selling proximity to one by the ticket. That's the trick the romance hides. The crater itself never goes on your deed. Economically, you bought the right to bring customers, wells, debt, and lawyers close to the mountain, and nothing more. The crater is scenery. The thing you actually own is a gate, and the gate answers to the mountain first, the regulator second, and you somewhere near the bottom of the list. So 3 questions before you sign anything. Can you really charge people to stand on danger? Can underground heat be turned into a bankable contract? And who actually wins when the asset is a mountain that can close itself without notice? Start with the menu. Volcanoes do not come with a clean sticker price because the crater itself is not really for sale. What sells is the right next to it. So your menu is not a menu of mountains. It is a menu of gates, and every gate you pick is just a different way of standing close to the same hazard. The cheapest gate looks like land. A federal geothermal lease auction in the United States covered 41,203 acres for a total of $168,592.50, with high bids around $2 to $2.50 an acre. That feels like a steal. Energy real estate at the price of a used car. Then you read the lease. 10-year term, annual rent on top of the bid, and site-specific proposals still required before you drill a single hole. You did not buy energy. You bought the right to apply for the right to look for it. The acres are yours. The steam underneath them still belongs to a permit you have not been granted. The second gate is the tourism bundle. When White Island Tours changed hands in 2017, the price was confidential, but the buyer drew 9 million New Zealand dollars of debt to do it, and the bundle was not a boat ride. It was vessels, zodiacs, a 38-room motel, a cafe, the intellectual property, and the exclusive boat landing license, while the island itself stayed the property of its trust. Read that again. You finance a hospitality village, you take on the debt, you carry the landing rights, and the crater you are selling tickets to never appears on your deed. You bought the queue to the gate. Someone else still owns the gate post. The third gate is the power plant. Run the heat through the standard cost proxy, about $4,350 a kilowatt for high-temperature hydrothermal, and a 46-megawatt project implies roughly $200 million of overnight capital. That is $200 million spent before the wells produce, before the mountain behaves, before the utility signs anything. The land gate cost you a car. The energy gate costs you a power station, paid up front, on the hope the geology cooperates. 3 gates. None of them is the volcano. 2 more costs nobody warns you about. Because here's what happens after you pay. You acquire a position, not control. The deed, the lease, the license, they put you in the queue. They don't open the gate. The first ownership bill is never champagne on the rim. It's a risk assessment, an audited safety plan, a well permit, a royalty account, an insurance negotiation where the underwriter has read the same eruption history you have and prices you accordingly. Wakari's family ownership traced all the way back to a 1935 purchase. By 2019, the people holding that gate were directors of a management company that took an annual license fee and a per-customer commission from 5 tour operators, and kept no staff and no permanent presence on the island itself. They had built the cleanest arrangement imaginable: collect a cut of every visitor, stand nowhere near the crater, let other companies run the boats. That arrangement looked elegant right up until the regulator turned the access gate into a courtroom object. Suddenly, the question wasn't who owns the land. It was who controlled who walked through the gate. A thin footprint on the island, did not buy a thin position in the file. The fee you collected from a distance still tied your name to the wharf. So picture your first day as owner. Not the crater lake steaming under a blue sky, the sulfur-stained wharf, the rack of gas masks, the hard hat that doesn't fit, the waiver clipboard with a pen on a string, and a lawyer politely asking you to explain exactly who decided the gate was open that morning. You arrived to own a mountain. The first document you signed was an indemnity form. The romance arrived as a risk assessment. Now the part that makes people buy anyway, because the engine, when it runs, is genuinely beautiful. Take the tourism lane. A posted Wakari fare ran around 229 New Zealand dollars, standard. On its own, that's just a ticket. But White Island tours reportedly carried about 18,000 passengers across 2 islands in 2016 and 2017. Volume turns a ticket into a business, and the proof is in the parent company's books. Adding White Island tours lifted the group's revenue from $500,000 New Zealand dollars to $4 million New Zealand dollars between 2017 and 2018. That is an 8-fold jump, and it came not from the crater changing, but from the gate finally being monetized at scale. Scarce access multiplied by passenger count becomes a real profit and loss statement. The crater is the supply chain. The gate charges admission. The scarcer the thing behind it, the more each ticket is worth. Now the energy lane, which seduces harder, because it dresses the same hazard in a contract. Puna Geothermal Venture had a deal amended toward 46 megawatts maximum, 30 megawatts minimum, at a fixed $70 per megawatt-hour on a term running all the way to 2052. If you run 30 megawatts continuously for a full year at that price, you get an $18.4 million in annual gross energy, as a proxy. Push to 46 megawatts and it is $28.2 million before outages, drilling, and maintenance, but contracted, predictable, and locked in for nearly 3 decades. And it was not a novelty act. In 2017, that one dangerous landscape supplied about 29% of Hawaii Island's electricity generation. The crater stopped being a postcard and became grid muscle, the thing the island cannot keep the lights on without. For the margin picture, look at scaled geothermal. Ormat's 2024 electricity segment reported $702.3 million of revenue at a 34.6% gross margin across a portfolio of 1,248 megawatts. A third of the top line falling through as gross margin is why smart money tolerates sulfur, permits, and wells that fail. Tickets or megawatt hours, the formula is the same. They only pay while your permission outruns the mountain. So who actually wins this game? Not the lone owner standing at one gate. The winner buys gates by the hundred. The geysers in California is about 725 megawatts across 13 operating geothermal plants, fed by 322 active steam wells and 92.2 miles of steam pipelines. The romance, at that scale, is a maintenance map. And that whole position sat inside Calpine, which a private equity buyer took private for $17 billion before Constellation completed its acquisition of Calpine in 2026, creating a 55-gigawatt platform serving 2.5 million customers. That is the difference between owning a volcano and owning the grid. When you hold one crater, a single dead well or a single permit refusal is your entire year. When you hold 322 wells and 92 miles of pipe inside a 55-gigawatt platform, any single well is a rounding error. The consolidator can lose a plant to an outage and still bill 2.5 million customers next month. He does not buy awe. He buys pipes, contracts, and a balance sheet big enough to shrug. The professional never owns the postcard. He owns the system the postcard plugs into, and he can hold it through the bad year that bankrupts the man with one gate. Which brings us to what happens when the gate slams shut. And it always eventually slams. Start with control. Wakari erupted at 2:11 in the afternoon on December 9th, 2019. 47 people were on the island, 22 died, and 25 were seriously injured. The owners believed they sold rare, managed access, a scarce thing, expensively guided. The management company's 2024 sentence was 1.045 million New Zealand dollars in fines, plus 4.88 million New Zealand dollars in reparation, before that conviction was later quashed on appeal. Notice what that does and does not prove. It does not prove that owning land automatically makes you liable. It sharpens the unresolved question instead. Who controlled the gate? What they sold, the courtroom decided to argue about, was responsibility. The rule is brutal in its simplicity. When you sell proximity to danger, you sell a claim on the consequences. The wharf kept earning after the tours stopped, but only for the lawyers. Now physical exit, a completely different way to die. Puna Geothermal was supposed to be the safe lane, firm, contracted, baseload heat, the opposite of a tourist crater. Then in 2018, Kilauea sent lava toward the plant. Operators quenched 10 of 11 wells, plugged the 11th with bentonite, and watched lava bury 2 capped wells. The plant sat dead from May 2018 until November 2020. 2.5 years of a contract that runs to 2052, producing nothing. The owners believed they owned scheduled electricity. They learned that baseload heat still needs a surface that exists, and a road that lava has not eaten. The contract ran to 2052. The lava did not check the contract. The bags of bentonite were the only thing on site doing their job, and the cheap entry trap, a third failure, and the quietest. That $168,000 federal lease felt like buying energy at a discount. It bought acres. The permits, the royalties, the site approvals, and the roughly $200 million of plant capital were all still in front of you, and none of them were optional. The owner who fixates on the auction number mistakes the cover charge for the bar tab. The bid was never the price. The bid was the cost of being allowed to start spending. 3 different gates, 3 different ways to lose, a courtroom, a lava flow, and a permit stack. None of them was the geology you fell in love with. So here is a good year versus a bad one. A good year is not the volcano was beautiful. A good year is a narrow list staying true all at once. The alert level stays acceptable, the gate stays open, the wells keep producing, the tourists or the utility keep paying, and the insurer and the regulator stay cooperative. Every one of those has to hold. Miss one and the year turns. A bad year is when any single item on that list breaks, and the revenue stops while the bills do not. The eruption stops the tickets. But 9 million New Zealand dollars of acquisition debt keeps accruing interest on schedule. The lava buries the wells, but the royalties, the safety duties, and the legal reserve stay exactly where they were. And control shifts the moment things go wrong, to the regulator who can close the access, to the utility who stops paying for power you can't deliver, to the court that decides what you owed, or to the mountain itself, which never asked your permission in the first place. You keep the costs. Someone else takes the wheel. The common mistake is simple. You think you bought a volcano. You actually bought a licensed position next to a hazard, and the license, not the lava, is the thing with your name on it. The gate was yours. The well was not.